I needed a break, my sister said after using my support money for a luxury Hawaii vacation. I canceled all payments. Now she's repaying every penny. I'm 32. For 2 years, I believed I was helping my sister Emily. She had 2 kids, Sarah, 8, and Michael, 6, along with a deadbeat ex-husband who hadn't paid child support in years, and bills that kept endlessly piling up. Every month without fail, I would send her money, sometimes up to $2,000, thinking I was supporting her and my niece and nephew, believing she was genuinely struggling to keep her family afloat. But I was wrong. Deeply, devastatingly wrong. I was being played like a fiddle, and it wasn't until one fateful family dinner when I discovered the truth about her. It was my mother's 60th birthday dinner, and the whole family had gathered at my parents' colonial-style house in the suburbs. Emily arrived fashionably late as usual, wearing designer clothes that I now realize should have been my first red flag, given her supposed financial struggles. The kids trailed behind her, noticeably subdued, wearing clothes that had clearly seen better days. The evening started normally enough. The conversation flowed as it usually did, work updates, neighborhood gossip, stories about the kids. My father dominated the conversation as usual, talking about his golf game, while my mother fussed over everyone's plates, making sure we all had enough to eat. Then, almost casually, Emily brought up Hawaii. At first, I thought she was just daydreaming, talking about a place she hoped to visit someday. But as she continued speaking, my blood ran cold. She wasn't talking about a future trip. She was describing a vacation she had already taken, a luxury getaway that had apparently happened just 2 months prior. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, as she elaborately detailed her stay at the Four Seasons Resort in Maui. She gushed about the private beach access, the all-inclusive package, and a spa experience that she claimed had completely transformed her. She showed pictures on her phone, Emily in a designer bikini, lounging by an infinity pool, sipping colorful cocktails at sunset, taking yoga classes on the beach. I felt like I was in some sort of twisted alternate reality. My mind raced back to all the tearful phone calls, the desperate texts about needing money for groceries, for the kids' school supplies, for urgent car repairs. I thought about all the overtime I'd worked, the vacations I'd postponed, the savings I'd depleted, all to help my sister who was supposedly struggling to make ends meet. The kids sat quietly at the far end of the table, picking at their food. Sarah's sweater had a visible hole in the sleeve, and Michael's sneakers were held together with duct tape. Yet here was their mother, casually discussing her luxury spa treatments and private yoga sessions. "Wait," I finally managed to say, my voice tight with controlled anger. "You went to Hawaii with what money?" The room fell silent. My mother suddenly became very interested in rearranging the flowers in the centerpiece. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. But Emily? She just looked at me with an expression of mild annoyance, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Well, yours," she replied, taking a sip of wine. "Obviously." The casual way she said it, like it was the most natural thing in the world, made my blood boil. But what came next was even worse. "The kids stayed with Mom and Dad," she continued, completely oblivious to my growing anger. "They had a great time, didn't you guys?" She directed this last part to Sarah and Michael, who just nodded silently, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You used the money I sent for the kids, money I worked overtime to give you for a luxury vacation." Emily rolled her eyes dramatically, setting down her wine glass with a little more force than necessary. "Oh my God, Tom, relax. The kids are fine. They had fun with Mom and Dad. I needed a break. Do you have any idea how hard it is being a single mother?" I glanced again at my niece and nephew, their shabby clothes a stark contrast to their mother's manicured appearance. Everything suddenly clicked into place. The new designer handbag she'd been carrying, the highlights in her hair, the fresh manicure. All while her children wore second-hand clothes and shoes held together with tape. "You used the money I sent you for the kids to go on vacation," I repeated, still struggling to process this betrayal. "Money that was supposed to be for their food, their clothes, their school supplies." She rolled her eyes again. "You don't get it, Tom. I'm a single mom. I needed a break. I deserve to be happy, too. And besides, she added with a sly smile. It wasn't just a vacation, I was networking. Networking? I echoed incredulously. Yes, networking, she said, brightening. That's actually how I met Jacob. He's amazing. Owns his own business, drives a Tesla, everything I've been looking for. We're going on another trip next month. That was the moment, that precise instant, when something inside me broke. 2 years of sacrifices, of working extra shifts, of putting my own life on hold to help my sister and her children, all flashed before my eyes. Every time I'd skipped a night out with friends because I'd sent my spare money to Emily, every time I'd put off buying something for myself because Emily had called with another emergency. It had all been a lie. "You took my money, Emily," I said, my hands shaking as I gripped the edge of the table. "Money that was meant to help your children, and you spent it on luxury vacations and chasing rich men." Her response was chillingly casual. "I had to get out there. I can't be a struggling single mom forever, you know. Someone has to take care of me." She dabbed her mouth delicately with a napkin. "And Jacob might be the one. He's talking about taking me to the Maldives next month." The dining room suddenly felt suffocating. "I've had enough," I announced, pushing my chair back from the table. "I'm done helping you. All of it, the rent money, the utility payments, the car loan, it stops now." The change in Emily's demeanor was instant and dramatic. The smug smile vanished, replaced by a look of panic I hadn't seen in years. "You can't do that," she sputtered. "I need that money. How am I supposed to?" Before she could finish, my father's fist crashed down on the table, making the dishes rattle. "How dare you say no to your own sister?" he thundered, his face reddening. "After everything this family has done for you." I turned to him, incredulous. "Are you serious right now? She's been lying to me for years, using money meant for her children's basic needs to fund luxury vacations and chase rich boyfriends." "She's trying to rebuild her life," my mother interjected softly, wringing her hands in her lap. "Dadding isn't easy these days, Tom. She deserves a chance at happiness." I laughed bitterly. "By lying to me, by neglecting her kids, look at them." I gestured toward my niece and nephew. "They're wearing worn-out clothes while she's getting spa treatments in Hawaii." "You're her brother," my father growled. "You're supposed to help family." "And I did help," I shot back, my voice rising. "I helped for 2 years. I worked overtime, I drained my savings, I put my own life on hold, all because I thought I was helping my sister and her children survive. But I wasn't helping them at all. I was funding her lifestyle while her kids went without." Emily's face had turned ugly with rage. "You're just jealous," she spat. "Jealous that I'm finally finding happiness while you're stuck in your sad little life." That was the final straw. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. "I'm done," I announced. "And I mean done. I'm canceling every payment, every transfer, everything. Figure out your own way to fund your luxury lifestyle." The room erupted into chaos. My mother burst into tears, begging me not to do this to my sister. My father started cursing, calling me every name in the book. Emily jumped up from her chair, screaming about how I was ruining her life. But what broke my heart most was watching Sarah and Michael. They didn't seem surprised or upset. They just sat there, quiet and resigned, as if they were used to their mother's priorities, used to being an afterthought. I walked out of that birthday dinner with my head held high, despite the screaming and crying behind me. The moment I got home, I opened my banking app and systematically canceled every automatic transfer and payment I'd set up for Emily, rent, utilities, car loan, everything. Update 1. Let me take you back to when this all started, the first time Emily came to me for help. Looking back now, I can see it was all carefully orchestrated manipulation, but at the time I was completely blind to her tactics. I was just a brother who wanted to help his sister in need. If only I'd known then what I know now. One evening, she showed up at my apartment, mascara running down her face, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Sarah and Michael were with her, both looking exhausted and hungry. Emily broke down the moment I opened the door. "My husband cleaned out our bank account," she sobbed, collapsing onto my couch. "He took everything, Tom, every last penny. The rent's due tomorrow, and I don't know what I'm going to do." I later learned this was her standard opening move, showing up unannounced, kids in tow, crying about her ex-husband's latest transgression. It was a calculated performance designed to hit all my weak spots. What kind of brother would turn away his sister and her hungry children? That first night, I ordered pizza for the kids while Emily poured out her story between sobs. Her husband had apparently disappeared again, leaving her with mounting bills and no child support. She showed me her empty bank account on her phone, along with a stack of overdue notices she'd brought with her. The electricity was about to be cut off, she said. The landlord was threatening eviction. I hate asking for help, she whispered, wiping her eyes. I've tried everything, Tom. I picked up extra shifts at work. I've been selling things online, but it's just not enough. The kids need new school clothes, and Michael's asthma medication is so expensive. I wrote her a check that night for $2,000. It was meant to be a one-time thing just to help her get back on her feet, but Emily had other plans. The request started small at first. A text message about needing money for the kids' school supplies. A tearful call about the car breaking down. Each time, she'd emphasize how much she hated asking for help, how she was working so hard to get things under control. "You're the only one I can turn to," became her favorite phrase. "Mom and Dad try to help, but they're on a fixed income. You're my last hope, Tom." She was clever about it, too. She'd always wait just long enough between requests to make them seem legitimate. She'd send me photos of the kids at school or doing homework, reminding me what my help was supposedly supporting. Sometimes she'd even send me small gifts, nothing expensive, just thoughtful little items that made me feel appreciated and needed. The manipulation extended to the rest of the family as well. At family gatherings, she'd make a point of talking about how hard she was working, how grateful she was for my help. "I don't know what we'd do without Tom," she'd say, hugging the kids close. "He's our guardian angel." Over time, the requests became more frequent and larger in amount. What started as occasional emergency help evolved into regular monthly payments. I was covering her rent, utilities, car payment, and various unexpected expenses that seemed to crop up with suspicious regularity. "The washing machine broke," she'd text. "The kids need clean clothes for school. Could you help? I'll pay you back as soon as Steve sends the child support he owes." Or, "Michael's teacher says he needs tutoring, but I can't afford it. I feel like such a failure as a mother. You're the only one who understands, Tom." She had a way of making each request seem urgent and temporary. There was always a promise to pay me back, always a story about how things would be different soon. Steve was supposedly starting a new job, or she was up for a promotion, or she'd found a way to make extra money from home. I now realize these were all tactics to keep me on the hook. She'd sometimes make small repayments, never more than a few $100s, just enough to maintain the illusion that she intended to eventually pay me back in full. She was also strategic about timing her requests. She'd often contact me late at night, when she knew I'd be tired and less likely to think critically. Or she'd wait until I'd just gotten paid, having somehow memorized my pay schedule. Special occasions were another favorite. She'd remind me of birthdays or school events coming up, making me feel guilty about the kids potentially missing out. The manipulation went deeper than just money. Emily would involve me in the kids' lives just enough to make me feel responsible for their well-being. She'd ask my advice about their education, invite me to their school events, make me feel like a crucial part of their support system. It was a subtle way of ensuring I couldn't easily say no when she needed money. After all, how could I abandon the children I'd become so invested in? She even manipulated my relationship with our parents. Whenever I'd express doubts about continuing to help her, she'd remind me how proud our parents were of me for stepping up and being there for family. She knew exactly how to use our family's expectations and values against me. The financial drain was gradual but significant. I started dipping into my savings, then putting off my own plans. I delayed buying a new car, postponed my plans for a down payment on a house. I picked up overtime at work, started freelancing on the weekends, all because I believed I was helping my sister and her children survive. "You're so good with money," she'd say, flattering me. "I wish I had your financial sense. That's why I trust you to help me figure all this out." What I didn't realize was that while I was scrimping and saving to help her, she was living a completely different life. The occasional new outfit or salon visit didn't raise red flags. After all, I reasoned, everyone needs to treat themselves sometimes, even when they're struggling. But now I know the truth. While I was working extra hours to send her money for groceries and utilities, she was planning luxury vacations and shopping at high-end stores. While I worried about her making rent, she was getting spa treatments and going on dates with wealthy men. The Hawaii revelation wasn't just about the vacation. It was about the complete betrayal of trust. Every tear she'd shed, every desperate phone call, every promise to pay me back. It was all part of an elaborate con, orchestrated by someone who saw me not as a brother, but as an ATM. Now, when I look at my bank statements, I don't see numbers. I see lessons learned the hard way about trust, family, and the importance of setting boundaries. And while I'll never stop caring about my niece and nephew, I've learned that sometimes the best way to help isn't by giving money, but by refusing to enable destructive behavior. Update 2. I wanted to thank everyone who commented on my last post. Looking back, I can see how naive I was, letting Emily manipulate me for so long. I thought it was over, but things escalated in ways I never expected, taking a dark and disturbing turn that ultimately forced me to take legal action. A few days after the birthday dinner confrontation, my mother showed up unannounced at my apartment. It was around 9 p.m., and she was clutching a bottle of prescription sleeping pills in her trembling hands. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hair disheveled. She'd clearly put effort into looking distraught. "I can't take this anymore, Tom," she said, her voice quivering. "The family is falling apart because of you. Emily might lose her apartment, the kids." She trailed off, dramatically rattling the pill bottle. "Maybe it would be better if I just ended it all." The emotional manipulation was so transparent it made me sick. This was the same tactic they'd used my entire life: guilt, threats, and emotional blackmail. But this time, they'd crossed a line. Using suicide as a manipulation tool was beyond despicable. I snatched the pills from her hands, my anger barely contained. "Get out," I said, my voice low and controlled. "You've gone too far this time, using suicide threats to manipulate me. That's low even for this family." She left in tears, but I knew it wasn't over. The next morning, I received an urgent email from HR requesting a meeting. Someone had sent an anonymous tip claiming I had been embezzling company funds and using company resources for personal gain. The allegations were specific enough that they couldn't be ignored, mentioning exact dates and amounts that coincided with times I'd sent money to Emily. I knew immediately who was behind it. Emily had taken the details of her own fraud and tried to weaponize them against me. Fortunately, I had kept meticulous records of every transaction, every text message where she'd begged for money, every email where she'd promised to pay me back. I had documentation proving every penny I'd sent her had come from my own accounts. The HR investigation cleared me completely, but I was furious. They had tried to destroy my career, my reputation, all because I'd stopped enabling Emily's lies. That's when I decided to take legal action. I hired a lawyer and gathered all my evidence. Bank statements showing regular transfers to Emily, text messages where she'd claimed the money was for bills and the children's needs, photos from her luxury vacation, and now documentation of their attempts to defame me at work. My lawyer's eyes widened as she reviewed the file. "This isn't just manipulation," she said. "This is fraud. The intentional misrepresentation of how the money would be used, the pattern of deception, the attempts to damage your career. We have grounds for both civil and criminal charges." I walked into my parents' house one last time, armed with legal documents. They were all there, my parents, Emily, even my aunt who'd been drawn into their web of lies. I placed the stack of papers on the coffee table. "You tried to get me fired," I said calmly, pulling out the HR documentation. "You tried to destroy my career because I stopped giving you money, and now you're going to face the consequences." Emily's face went pale. My father started to bluster, but I cut him off. "I'm pressing charges," I continued. "Fraud, defamation, harassment, all of it. I have everything documented. Every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to destroy my life." "You wouldn't dare," Emily whispered. "We're family." Family doesn't try to get each other fired. Family doesn't use suicide threats as manipulation. Family doesn't steal from each other and then try to ruin the victim's life. My mother began to cry, but this time her tears held no power over me. My father threatened to disown me, but I just laughed. You can't disown someone who's already walked away. The legal proceedings were brutal. Emily faced fraud charges for misrepresenting how she'd used the money I'd sent. My parents were charged with harassment and making false threats. The evidence was overwhelming: years of text messages, bank statements, emails, and witnesses who'd seen Emily's luxury lifestyle while claiming poverty. The family's reputation in our small community was shattered. My parents' friends, who'd always seen them as pillars of the community, were shocked by the revelations. Emily's new boyfriend, the Tesla-driving businessman, disappeared the moment the charges became public. The courts ordered Emily to repay every penny she'd taken from me, with interest. She was also sentenced to probation and mandatory financial counseling. My parents faced their own consequences for the harassment and false suicide threats. But the real impact wasn't legal. It was personal. Other family members who'd witnessed their manipulation over the years finally spoke up. Cousins shared stories of similar schemes. Aunts and uncles admitted they'd seen the manipulation but had been too afraid to say anything. I moved to a different city, changed my number, and blocked them on every platform. I set up a separate trust fund for Sarah and Michael's education, managed by a professional trustee to ensure Emily couldn't touch it. They might be victims of their mother's manipulation, but they wouldn't be victims of her financial abuse. The healing process was slow. There were nights I lay awake, questioning whether I'd done the right thing by pressing charges. But then I'd remember the years of manipulation, the attempted career sabotage, the suicide threats, and I knew I'd made the right choice. Today, I'm stronger for having gone through this. I've learned that true family doesn't manipulate or exploit. I've learned that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes the greatest victory wasn't the legal judgment or the repayment order. It was finally breaking free from their manipulation and choosing to live life on my own terms.